My name's Tom Armitage. I am the technical writer at MapTiler and also a GIS skills trainer doing a lot of work with the University of Edinburgh. And today I'm going to be talking about creating hillshades, some of the new technologies and the new sort of options and functionality that have been built into QGIS over the last few years mean that you can now do some really powerful things with QGIS without actually having to resort to any third-party software to make your hill shading look extra special. So I'm going to be talking about that. It's going to be using a lot of plugins with QGIS to bring in some extra functionality to make things look even more special, but we're not going to resort to any other software at any point other than jumping into a web browser to sign up for a MapTiler free account so that you can access the data from there. So that's the element of being able to do this for anywhere in the world, because MapTiler are providing this 3D terrain layer for the whole of the planet. It's about 30-meter resolution, just a little bit higher, and so yeah, we'll be using that to create hillshades, and then we're going to bring in some downloaded data to do some of the 3D work, mainly because the native 3D in QGIS doesn't like to use global layers. It tries to stuff the whole lot in there, so it slows everything up. Now I've got an instruction in the booklet, a step-by-step guide. So if something goes wrong today and you're not able to follow along, or you want to go back and look at something, then go to this link and download your copy or view it. If you just click on there, it'll take you to the Google Doc online, which you can read online, or you can download. There should be a button to download it just up there. I'll leave that so you can see. And yeah, it's a step-by-step guide. So all the different steps that we're doing here. If you get lost or stuck, refer to the guide and it'll take you through everything that you need to know. Let's get started. So a little word about the format. What we're going to cover today is setting up the MapTiler plugin, bringing in DEM data from MapTiler. Then we'll look at the native options in QGIS for getting the most out of the hill shading on that data set. And then we're going to bring in a DEM from a file. This is just some open data. There's a link in the booklet. Again, I'll pop it in the chat for you to be able to download that data. It's a very small bit of, I think, Eastbourne beach, beachfront, and pier and everything like that. And then we're going to use something called the Relief Visualization Toolbox plugin to do some really great detailed hill shading on that particular data set. That's like a 10-centimeter resolution DEM, so there's a lot of detail to bring out. And then we're going to have a quick look at the native 3D options, which are improving all the time in QGIS, but are still a little bit sort of slow to get started, and the controls are a little bit awkward to use. But every version, things get better and better, so it's worth having a look at that. And then the final step of today, we are actually going to use another plugin, QGIS to 3JS, which allows you to build a web scene using your data that you've been using the hillshade. Let's get started. So if you can fire up QGIS, you should have a screen that looks a little bit like this. This is just a new blank project. And what I'm going to get you to do first is install the MapTiler plugin. So that's done from this top menu here. So we're just getting started on page, no page numbers, page 3 of the booklet here. So manage and install plugins. And what we're going to do when we've opened that is search for MapTiler. And when you highlight that, you should see the details of the plugin. I've already got it installed, but you'll have an install button down here, which you just click on, and the installation process will begin. So it doesn't actually, it's one of those plugins that's a bit of a mystery as to what's happened when it's installed. But the main thing that you should notice once it's there is on your browser tab, which is down here on my screen, is the bottom left here. Hopefully you can all see that. But if you click on that browser tab, you'll get a list of different data sources. And in the middle here, you should see the MapTiler has appeared in the list. Now, to actually get this plugin to work, what you're going to need to do is set up a MapTiler account. And we need to do that online by going to the MapTiler page and just quickly setting up. It doesn't take long. As I said, there's no credit card details needed. It's all free for non-commercial use. So let me just pop that link into the chat for you all. There we go. Ooh, missed off the front letter. There we go. So when you do that, if you haven't already logged in, it will ask you to log in with your email or Google account. Let's see if I can just close these things and get it to. So from the MapTiler homepage, if you ever end up there, it's basically click on My Cloud, and you'll be faced with a sign-in page like this, or with a Create Account button down the bottom here. And if you just quickly sign in with a Google account, that's the easiest way. And you'll be taken to a page that looks a little something like this. Now, what we need to do is, because our QGIS MapTiler plugin needs a verification and an account details, which go in here, we need to get that from the web. So we do that through the account page here, and then we just go down to where it says credentials, and you can see I've already got my service credentials, which I use for MapTiler. So all you need to do is click on New Credential, give it a name, so something like MapTiler plugin. Click Save, and then you can copy that credential straight from this page here. So you just click on this button here, and it will copy that credential into your clipboard. If we go back there, you can see if you're using MapTiler for other things like web mapping, you might want to have different credentials for these sorts of things. But I've got mine for my plugin. It's copied to my clipboard, and then I can go back into QGIS. And to get to this, you just right-click on your MapTiler in the browser panel here, and then where it says Account, paste the token into this section here, and click OK. And then you're ready to go with data from your MapTiler account. Now you can see there's a long list here of different maps. They're all based primarily on OpenStreetMap data, with a few extra things that we add in at MapTiler. And these are all different cartographies of the same data set, highlighting different things in different ways. But the one that's different is this terrain RGB. And that's what we're going to be working with today for our hillshades. So is everyone happy with where they are? Thumbs up if you've got the option to stick a thumb up. Are we looking good? Getting 1 or 2 thumbs up. Pace wise, are we okay? If you can't see terrain RGB in the list, okay. I'm wondering if you've already had the what all you need to do if you can't see it is where it says MapTiler, right click again, and you can see it says add new map. And this will take you to a list here, and you should have the terrain RGB in this list. I don't have it because it's already in this list. I'm wondering if you had an older version of the plugin. Is that working now with the add a new map? Feel free to yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Hi, Tom. I'm still not seeing it. So I've got MapTiler, and when I open that up, I've got basic, bright, outdoor, satellite, streets, toner, topo, and Voyager. And then when I've right-clicked and gone to add a new map, I've got a from URL tab and a MapTiler cloud, and I can't see it in either of those options.
Right. Okay, that's strange. Did you have the MapTiler plugin before?
I literally just installed it before this meeting.
Right. Okay, that's very strange.
Should I restart QGIS?
Well, what version of QGIS do you have?
Good question.
Just to say that's the same for me as well. I've got 3.22.
So I'm 3.227.
That it should be working. So yeah, if you have an older one, that might not be the case. But okay, let's see if we can do this another way. It's an important thing to remember to make sure your EPSG before we move on to the adding the data is in the right projection. Otherwise you'll end up with something a little silly looking like that. For some reason I've got some mess on my screen, but so we want to be in 3857, which is the pseudo Mercator, and then we can add our data. So yeah, if you perfect. Yeah, thanks, Cami. What we need to do is use our own, because that's actually got your API key in it. So if you go to your cloud account, let's just go through this from the start here. So on your tiles section here, that's the one. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah. And then go down to your terrain RGB and grab the link with the tile JSON link, which is the top one, and paste that into your URL thing. So yeah, thanks, Andrew, and Oliver there for putting the details in the chat. So yeah, that's the link you want to put in. Copy the top one, the tile JSON, using the copy link, and then jump over to MapTiler plugin, add new map from URL, and pop it in there. Brilliant. Great. Not sure where that's gone. I will see if it's something to do with the plugin or not. And we'll make sure that's not a problem. So returning to the list there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that. So basically, by double clicking on one of these things in the side here, you'll add it to your map. So I'm going to double click on my terrain RGB twice. So one double click and another double click, and then go to my layers, and I'm just going to remove that one that I've got from, well, I'm going to put it at the bottom actually, so I can make sure everything works still with this one. But what you should be left with is something that looks like this. This is our terrain RGB layer as brought in. Now, the reason I brought it in twice is because it's nice to have something to look at with, and you need it to put your hillshade on top. So this is what we've got here. And what I'm going to do is zoom in to around about 1 to 250,000 on a particular mountain. So I'm going to choose Mount Taranaki in New Zealand, so which is on this lump here. Just let my layers catch up. So yeah, I'm going to tweak my scale so it's around 1 to 250,000. It's a rather trippy layer underneath. So and then what we can do now is we actually get to see what our hillshade actually looks like on the details of the mountain. So what I'm going to do is rename one of my terrain RGBs as hill shading. There we go. And now when we've got our layer panel on the right hand side, now we can distinguish between the two different layers. So we've got our hill shading as the top layer. If you haven't got your layer styling panel out, it's F7 on the keyboard, or you can just click on this little button here, the paintbrush above the layers there, and it will open up. And where it says single band pseudo color on the top right there, we're going to change that to hillshade. So this is QGIS just in default mode, creating its own hillshade from that terrain layer, and you can see it's pretty good from the get-go. Over on the right hand side, we're going to change our layer blending mode to multiply, and this is now like treating this as two slides in a projector, and you're putting both slides in front of the light there. So what's dark on one slide will be projected over the top of the other. So this is a great way of getting your hillshade on there. Traditionally, obviously, transparency would have been used, but that muddies the detail on the other layer. By using these blend modes, it's a lot more a lot better. So already we've got something that looks pretty good, but there's some extra things that have been added to QGIS recently, which really do make these hillshades pop. So if you don't have the option, then it's because you've got your version of QGIS is probably a bit too old. So if it's okay for your workflows and everything else, it's 3.22 should definitely have that. Are you using the other terrain layer? Let me have a look. Yes, that's what it is. It's not an option. This is very annoying. Apologies for that. So right, what you can do if you let me just skip down and get you some DEM data to play with so that it actually works. So let me just copy this link and put it into the chat here. So if you go to this link and download the data, it's a very small data package, so it shouldn't take too long. And you'll then be able to do all of this stuff on this DSM digital surface model of Eastbourne's seafront. Yeah, very sorry about that. I'm not sure why this isn't working for some of you, which is quite frustrating. But anyway, you can play around with that data, and you can also watch and see what these different options do. So we've got our hillshade here, and obviously adding it there. Let me just scroll back up here. So what we can do is increase the Z factor just to give that a little bit more oomph, darken up things, sort of like making the topography a little bit more extreme than it really is. You see, it's maybe a little bit dull. The other thing we can do is tick this multi-directional button, which actually then it's sort of mixing together a few different hillshades with different light sources, which is a bit more realistic in terms of you would get natural ambient light coming from multiple directions in real life. So that again improves the hillshade a little bit. So we've got something that looks pretty good now. Now it's darkened things down a little bit, perhaps a little bit too much. So what I've done by a little bit of experimentation and trial and error, found that for this particular hillshade, boosting the brightness up to 60 and the contrast up to 10 really helps bring out the hillshade in this area. So this will depend variously on the data that you've got and how it interacts with the other layers. So it's a little bit of trial and error there, but it's really worth playing with these things to bring out the most best in it. Now you probably won't notice on my screen, but if you zoom in a little bit more, you can see how things are going really quite blocky very quickly. Now, this was a problem that we collaborated with Lucha Consulting to fix, and what's appeared in the latest versions of QGIS is this early resampling button. And we sort of collaborated with them to add this. So what this does is it resamples the data before pulling it down and putting it into QGIS. So normally you would see this blocky effect, and then you would change your resampling to bilinear or to cubic, and it would get rid of this. But it doesn't when it's pulling data from web sources. But now that there's this button here, we tick that early resampling, and that just goes away. Yeah. So if you're not getting that option to do the hill shading, it's probably because of the data source. So we saw it's not an option if you've brought that in, but it should be an option if you are have the data straight out of the MapTiler plugin, or are you using a different data source? Liam, is that the case for you, that you are using the different data source? Or so Laura, you don't have it. Are you on a Mac, Laura? Windows. Very and version 322. What one? Pretty sure I am on 326. But this I know the hill shading should be a bit more recent than that. Sorry, should be working on 322. Yeah. Okay. Well, try downloading the data from the link that I posted earlier, and seeing if that works. If you have a more recent. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Laura. Good. And thanks, Andrew. Brilliant. Great. So there we've got really rather good-looking hillshade, very good-looking hillshade. Not had to resort to any plugins or any other software to get something that looks an awful lot better, I think you'll agree, than what used to be the standard. Get a DEM, take it to the processing menu, go it all the raster. Do your analysis and these sorts of things to generate a new layer, a sort of a hillshade layer. You'd be doing something like this, typing in hillshade, doing the raster terrain analysis, feeding in your layers, and then generating a new layer, and then putting that over the top with a transparency. And you ended up with a sort of grey, muddy mess that you couldn't really do a lot with very quickly. Here, you can quickly change the angle of the sun and these sorts of things by just moving the wheels around on here and changing the degrees and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a much more flexible approach and gives some pretty good results really quickly. So that's the sort of the first step over with. Now, just a quick thing for those of you who have got this terrain RGB working. If you were then to want to do this, use this in things like a plugin that we're going to be using in a minute, the Relief Visualization Toolbox, or in the 3D, you can actually export a bit of the map that you're interested in. So let's say it's this piece here. If you want to use it in a plugin that can't connect to these web data sources, you can export that out as a GeoTIFF, and then you can use it. So the next section in the booklet from page 11 just takes you through that that process. So it's actually, if we right click here on Terrain RGB and just go down to export and save as, it's quite straightforward. You do need to set this up a bit carefully. So you need to turn off create VRT. Give yourself a file name, something that you'll remember. And yeah, we're in the Hillshade workshop, so we can just create a file name there. So say Mount Taranaki. That's GeoTIFF. So there we go. So that pops that in there. And the important thing is to not use the current layer extent, but the map canvas. So you're chopping a piece out and not creating a huge thing covering the whole world. And then in the resolution section, this is important, otherwise it won't work. You need to sort of put in the resolution that your GeoTIFF will be. This is close enough to 30 meters to be the right sort of thing to use here. And then just click OK, and it will generate that as its own little DEM layer. So turn all the others off, zoom out. That's our little bit of Mount Taranaki. And then you can use that to do the same things that we were just doing there. So there's the hillshade. Change the resampling. Still got a bit of an artifact in there, but there we go. Cool. So that's how you can chop a piece out to then go off and do whatever it is that you need to do with it. Okay, there's a question here from Matt. Yes. Very true. Working with colors, and you'll notice here on the terrain RGB that the coastline is a very loose arrangement of where actually would the coastline be, and tidal ranges do have a big impact on that. And I think if we zoom out and have a look at the UK, that's a particularly interesting. Because most of sort of Cambridgeshire is in that grey area between land and water due to its altitude. So yes, and most of East Yorkshire too, by the looks. So yes, selecting colour schemes to get this right is quite a tricky thing. Great. Okay, so I've shown you there how to export that chunk, and then we can use that in whatever we want. So the next step is actually to bring in this data from the DEM file that I shared everywhere. So if you're getting to follow along with me, we'll move on to that stage. Hopefully now these sorts of things will work for everyone. So here's that link again to download the data. I'm just going to click on that. And that should open up the link here. And it is just a case of clicking the download button top right, and then we've got our zip folder with the data. Oops, there we go. That's just opened up in a folder here, and I'm just going to extract all and just pop it on my desktop so it's easy to find. Okay. That should work. There we go. Oh, there was already one there. Well, I can just skip that for now and use the one. So there we've got data on the desktop. So back in QGIS, we can, I think what we'll need to do is start a new project. Again, remembering your EPSG, make sure it's set to 27700 British National Grid. For those of you who are not, I really don't know where that message is coming from, sorry. But yeah, you can just type into the search here 27700 and it will pop up in the list down here if you haven't got that already. So I double click on that and then OK. And we have our new clean sheet. We have our data, which we have downloaded here. So we can just drag that and add it. And there we have our DSM, digital surface model of Eastbourne. You can see the pier, the buildings, and then the beachfront. So the idea of bringing this in is that we're going to work with the Relief Visualization Toolbox plugin, which there are several hill shading plugins now, most of which have been rendered obsolete by the fact that you've got that ability to just quickly turn on the hill shade here on the right hand side. But the Relief Visualization Toolbox is really quite impressive in what it can do. So yeah, it really is a great plugin, and it does way more than any of the other sorts of hill shading tools that are out there. So first of all, let's have a little tinker with the color on this one. We were just talking about that. So we're going to go with a single band pseudo color. It picks one at random. Let's have a little look at the data. Bring it a bit up close and have a look. And actually, I use my favorite one on this, which is the spectral. So I'm going to turn that over. But you know, we've got sea over here and buildings over there, so we want the blue to be low and the red to be high. So I'm going to go back into my color ramp on the layer styling panel there. So I changed it to spectral earlier. What I'm going to do this time is just invert the color ramp. And there, when we zoom out, you can see we've got a blue sea and a sort of green lower layer and red for the tallest buildings. If we do zoom in a little bit more, we can make sure our resampling is set to bilinear down here in the bottom of the layer styling panel, and you can start to see there's some vague things you can pick out just from the digital surface model here. Some dots here and some sort of rectangles. On the beach, you can vaguely make out that there's probably some groins on there as well. On the pier, we've got a few different things, bit of backscatter from the surface of the pier. It looks like there might have been something reflective on there. Buildings, there's a tall one, sort of, and then the rest are all medium. But you're not getting a huge amount of information out of this DSM just looking at it as is. So this is when we can actually do something really good by using this Relief Visualization Toolbox to really bring out some of this detail. Now, if we look at step 6 in the booklet, which is page 15, there's some information about the guys that made this. It's from the University of Ljubljana, and they've got some really good documentation about all the different things that it can do. But I guess first things first, let's install it if you haven't got it already. Manage and install plugins. Again, up at the top. And then this time, let's search for Relief Visualization. It should pick that one out straight away. I mean, if you look in all, and these are some of the other different tools that you can use for hill shading, batch hill shaders. Quite useful if you've got a lot of tiles to do. But it's this relief visualization toolbox that we're interested in. Being a bit of a pain for me today. It's not giving me the details. Anyway, there we go. You've got select that one and install it. And that will give you something that you can now use in the raster menu at the top. You should now see Relief Visualization Toolbox as an option. So it all looks a bit scary with lots of different options and things to do. But essentially, if you look at the documentation on the website for Relief Visualization Toolbox, you can see the different things that it creates. These things like slope and hill shading, obviously, but things like local relief model, sky view factor. It's taking into account how much ambient light there is around. If it's in a tight canyon, it's going to be dark. There's going to be less light reflecting in from different angles. Lots of different things about openness, all very similar, but basically modeling how much light is going to land on a particular pixel given these different conditions. So lots of things that you can research there, but it kind of gives you this initial interface, which is like designed to sort of give you the power to choose all of these things. But obviously, if we go to this Blender tab, nothing to do with the software Blender, but it basically allows you to create a mixture and then apply that as a single layer. And there's some really good presets in here, and the best one is this archaeological preset here. And you can see what that's going to do. It's going to incorporate the sky view factor, the openness positive, the slope gradient, and a hill shade. You can see the different things. It's going to blend these in different ways, apply different minimum and maximum values on that, and then the opacity at the end, which has, obviously the hill shade is the biggest effect, and then sort of a half effect of the openness and slope gradient, and then a 25% effect of the sky view factor. So if we can just put in our DSM into the top bit there, and then leave the rest of it as is, we can actually generate this hill shade. This does take a minute or two, and then add it to our map window. So click on the blend images button. This takes a minute or two, so maybe time to have a quick look at at the University of Ljubljana's website and see what it does. But as it's working away, we've asked it to add it to QGIS once it's done. So it will automatically add it in there, and then all we need to do then is just adjust the resampling so it's not nearest neighbor, and change the blend mode so that we can see the colors through it, and we should have a very nice looking relief map at the end of it. Now I saw Andrew Tyrrell is in the audience. Have you been using I'm sure I've seen some of your hill shades online that are absolutely stunning. Is that right?
Yeah, you're revealing all of my secrets here.
Sorry.
I've been, yeah. Kia ora, everyone. Yeah, I'm Andrew. I live in New Zealand now, but used to live in the UK, work for Ordnance Survey. Yeah, I use the Relief Visualization Toolbox, specifically the sky view factor and hill shade from multiple directions, and just kind of, yeah, layering them up. Also combined with texture shading from Llewellyn Brown released a bit of software that runs in the command line. Not quite sure if there's a QGIS plugin for that yet, but yeah, just building up all sorts of different things in order to kind of basically create something that's a bit more semi-realistic than just a standard hillshade.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, obviously people then go off into Blender and do have clouds floating above these things and all this kind of stuff. But for me, just being able to do this sort of thing in QGIS without having to learn a new tool is fantastic. We're ready. We can have a look. So as I mentioned, we can just change these, make sure we're on the new layer. Yep. And we can change this to bilinear, so it's a little bit more smooth when we zoom in, and we'll change the blend mode to multiply again. And now you can see we have this rather stunning looking hillshade. The rectangles that we could just pick out suddenly become obvious that these are cars and buses. We can even pick out a few people walking down the promenade, maybe a bench or two here and there, but it's created something that's really visually a lot more lifelike than, you know, when we're just looking at the DSM colored by height. We're adding this sort of stuff in, looks really rather impressive. You can see roof lines very, very clearly. I mean, this this archaeological setting is designed to pick out every last little detail, and you can sort of see waves and movement and where the sort of previous tide lines on the beach, and that's exactly what it's for. It's for archaeologists to sort of pick out those lumps and bumps in the ground that could potentially be somewhere that they would like to dig. So yes, hopefully you've all got a similar result as this one. And yeah, I mean, there's a little bit what you can do in the Relief Visualization Toolbox. We just jump back there. Is actually you could tick this Save Visualizations button here, and it will actually save out each individual layer so that you can actually maybe play around with these things and see what having effect, what changing some of these various brightnesses and blend modes and things, how that affects these individual layers and what each one does, and then maybe gives you more ideas to what you can do. Yeah, the DSM is Oliver is the Environment Agency one, just downloaded from their website or the data.gov for this location. But yeah, I like to use this one because it is such a high resolution DSM, so you get to see all these cool details that you can actually relate to, you know, the wiggly boundaries in the car parks of what's probably a hotel, these sorts of things. Yeah, and the detail on the beach, it really does highlight why this is very useful for archaeologists. Great. So hopefully in the booklet there's links through to the website, so you can read all about the toolbox and what it can do. Okay, so that's kind of the hill shading side of things, but obviously we've got a 3D side of things that we can actually use QGIS, and we can use plugins for QGIS to actually render this all in 3 dimensions. So that's the next aspect of this. Obviously global, because I showed you how to export a piece of the MapTiler data and do this anywhere in the world. We'll carry on working with this data set for now because it's a pretty good one. And what we're going to do, if I just come up to the top here and get the pier on screen, and then we can go to our view menu at the top here, and 3D maps and new 3D map view. We want to be fairly zoomed in here, so it's not not trying to process a lot of data. And that should open up a little bit of a window like this. And then we can actually have a look at this particular location in 3D. So if I click on the spanner in this 3D map view, and we can click on configure. At the moment, it's thinking this is flat terrain, so we need to teach QGIS which thing is the right layer to use. So we want to say, well, we've got a DEM, a raster layer in here, and the elevation is going to come from not the hill shading, but the actual underlying DSM. What we also want to do is up this tile resolution. Now, this does make it slower, but it means that you're actually getting some reasonable detail to look at. Otherwise, it's just a hazy blob. So I'm going to bump that all the way up to 1024. And then we're going to click OK and see what that looks like. So we have a scene now. And if I click on this bottom button here, we can see that we've now actually got this in 3D. So I'm using the scroll wheel to go in and out with the zoom, and these arrows to go up and down. Now, I've had this fail a lot on me. And now I'm just clicking to pan and look around. So it's quite clunky, quite slow. The right click which you would think would rotate you around like it does in every other 3D interface doesn't do that. So it just, if you hold down your right mouse button, you just zoom in and out, even if you go side to side. So that unfortunately doesn't work. But the left click to pan around does work, and you can just tilt the view that way and that way. So I'm keeping it small on purpose so that it doesn't sort of overwhelm things, but let's be a bit braver and get that a bit bigger. And have a look back down there. So yeah, the only thing I can't seem to do is rotate the view. It's left, right, backwards and forwards. That's it. So my nemesis of having to click on the scroll wheel, which then moves and does stuff. But if I hold that down, then we can we've got the whole functionality there. Thank you very much, Gavin. But there you can see the pier in all its glory. Rotate that back up. So that's kind of cool. If we had a lot more data in here, then it would be going even slower. Trying to avoid it from docking at the top of the map there, but yeah, it's not bad. It's flexible, but if you wanted to share this, then you would have to send a project to someone else, and they would have to have QGIS. But there is a really cool, very easy to use plugin that will generate this as a miniature website, and that's the bit that I would going to show you next. But any questions about this so far? Has everyone got the 3D working? If we can see some thumbs. Just one so far. Two. Have a look on the other screen. So yeah, no, more and more appearing. That's great. Everyone happy with it all? Good. Teaching you new things that you haven't used before. Great. Super. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is use this QGIS to 3JS plugin. So 3JS is a JavaScript language for creating 3D things, and this has been one of my favorite plugins for quite some time, and it's been getting better recently with more options and things like that. So yeah, we'll have some fun with this one. So I'm going to close this 3D window now. We can stick with the same same data, the same view. And let's switch back to our plugins menu. Manage and install plugins. And this time we are going to search for QGIS 2. It's actually quite a good search to do just in general. There's QGIS to Web, which is another really great plugin that help you put turn your QGIS maps into web maps. But the one we're going to have a look at today is this QGIS 23JS. So this is developed by someone, I think this one's developed by someone in Japan. But again, if you can click on the install plugin button and we can have a look at this one. So once that's installed, we can find it in the web menu at the top. Second one down for me, QGIS 23JS. And we want to open the one with the exporter. This gives you a preview of what so you can see what's going on. Oops, there we go. You can have it nice and large, but similarly to the 3D view, you need to tell it what's the DEM and what's going on, and then it will start to build up the view for you, and we can have a play around with it. So first of all, the DEM is the DSM. Oop, it's it down. So doesn't seem to have picked this up. I might just need to. No, that one. Oh, I have to restart this. Hang on a sec. It's not liking that I have had the 3D view open, even though I have closed it. So let me just I think if I remove that, manage and then remove. I think that does work.
Sorry, Tom, I find it only works if I actually restart QGIS completely.
Thank you, Claire. Right. Okay, so I'm going to have to do a restart. I think you guys will too. Again, that's another little bit of a problem that the still maturing 3D viewer has with QGIS. So let's just close that. I can discard that project and then restart QGIS. There we go. Sorry about that. These things sort of come and go. They get fixed and then a new version comes out and it breaks again. So it's always a bit hit and miss whether that's going to happen. So we'll need to add back in our layers. So let's just now we've got them. It should be close. There we go. I'll add in my raster data set. It's on the desktop. That's the wrong one. And the Right, it's being a pain. There we go. So quickly just restyle my maps. And we should be back in business. There. Cool. Never a dull moment giving training courses. We'll get that in the corner there, and we can go back to our web and QGIS to 3JS exporter. And we can turn on our map, and it should start building us a bit of a thing. Now, you can see here in the exporter straight away that it's nice. I find this a lot easier to use than the live 3D, but everything looks a little bit melted, and we can do something about that by just tweaking some of the options. So the options in this QGIS to 3JS exporter is this is where they keep adding more and more things, but it keeps making the interface more and more complicated. So hopefully I'll help you navigate through this, and we can get things looking a lot better. So we have ticked the box to make this DSM our 3D layer, but what we can do now is right click on that and just have a look at the properties that pop up. So we're going to up the resampling level to 4, which should, if I click apply, should actually give us a little bit more more detail. You can see there the buildings are a lot straighter now. We could take that a bit higher, but the more higher you go, the slower things get. Next, yeah, I mean, that's particularly important if you've zoomed quite a long way out, because it covers the area in a lot less detail. So you'll want to really improve that. You can change this image width as well. Again, we're starting to push how long this might take to build if we go too high. But again, that's doubling the amount of the size of the image, so you've got a lot more detail in there. So that's on the main tab. On the others tab, it is quite cool to build the sides, which gives you this sort of if I zoom out, this sort of edge to it, which you can't see at the moment because it goes below, well, I haven't applied it yet, but it goes below sea level. So you can see the edge there, but then it kind of disappears with the sea. So we could actually altitude at the bottom, make that -10, and that's going to sort of drop that down below sea level. So you can see the side will be now below that sea level. Okay, so that's given us more like a sort of a solid block of wood that this has been carved into, rather than a sort of 2.5D surface. And we can see our cars and everything like that on the streets now. So looking very good. But yeah, just so much easier to navigate around, and so much quicker and more responsive than the native 3D. But I'm sure eventually that will be the same. So we can also change a few other things in here. So the scene settings is the other place to go. So scene and scene settings at the top there. So you could change the vertical exaggeration here, because we've got buildings and things like that. You don't really need to do that. other interesting things is the sky. So I quite often use this to build sort of 3D data visualizations representing cities as columns and things like that. So actually being able to change from a sort of a sky setting to sort of having like a black background is actually really quite useful, because it takes the focus away from sort of, it's not like a 3D scene, it's actually a data visualization. So a very useful tip there. But if you're doing something like this in 3D, then the sky is a little bit more appropriate. Similarly, I wouldn't build sides on that sort of thing. I'd just let the data speak for itself, coming out of a flat plane. But this is kind of the setup that you would use to sort of build a landscape, if you see what I mean. There's some other things in there. The lighting effects. This is kind of cool. If you want to turn your sort of Eastbourne Pier into some sort of film set, some post-apocalyptic thing, you can add a fog. So if you can just use the sort of white fog, and it sort of, as you zoom through it, it sort of disappears. But if you increase the density of it and change it to some sort of radioactive green, you can start to do some silly things like that. And as you sort of zoom through the streets, it's sort of Mad Max style. You see a bit more detail. As you zoom out, it all disappears into the haze. So you can play around with these sorts of things, and do whatever it is that you want to do to your scene that way. So there we have our scene, and nice and easy and flexible, and we can have a lot of fun with it here in QGIS. But as I mentioned before, you can actually share this as a web page, and that's exactly what this is. This is all great as a preview, but what it will do is build this as a 3JS JavaScript miniature website that you can either embed in your own website, display online, or you can actually just package it up into a folder, a zip folder, send it to someone, and they can just open that, double click on the web page that's at the top there, and open it in any sort of fairly modern browser. So you don't actually need to put it on the web. It makes it into this really neat little shareable package. So the settings for all of that are up at the top here. So it's on the file and export to web options here. So there are a few things that you need to do to actually set this up. Obviously, first, the output directory, I'm just going to send this to temp. I sort of do hundreds of these a day whenever I'm messing around with this plugin. And I'm just going to leave that as index.html, just so that you just in the file, in the folder there. If you might want to give these things a name and a location if it's something that you're wanting to save to use again later. The important thing to tick here is this enable the viewer to run locally. If you don't tick that, then it won't just work running it on off your hard drive. It needs to be online. Equally, I guess if you're running this online, you might want to leave that unchecked, but depends on how you set up your website. And the template, I mean, there's just the 3D viewer, but there's also the option to have it with a little data GUI panel. I'm going to enable that so you can have a look at that. And I'm going to add a custom plane to it as well, because this is a seaside thing, so we can have a look at having a sea level in there as well. I've not played around with this animation side of things in terms of exporting, but what you can do is set up an animation here. So I'm assuming just ticking the box will play that animation it looks as though here. Well, let's just export this for now. So tick that box there. The animation thing is actually quite quite cool. So we'll have a look at that after we've had a look at what it's built. So that's all just saved in my temp folder. But if you've given it a location, you'll be able to dig into this and have a play with it later. Here you can see the important bit to know is this web page file at the bottom there. So that's just a link to an HTML page. And if I click on it, it just opens up my default browser. And this is now in Chrome, just that 3D scene that we were just looking at, zoomable and everything like that, just straight from your web browser, which is really cool. The custom plane is quite cool. So we can actually, if I make that a sort of a bluey color, let's go on up here, and there you can see at the moment it's the altitude is minus 10, so low tide perhaps. If we put that up to 1, you'll see that's where it would be, and then you can sort of drag this up and sort of see where things are. So 9-meter increase in sea level would bring the water up to here, and so on and so forth. So quite good for flood modelling. We actually use this at the University of Edinburgh when we're sort of teaching the students flood modelling. You know, where would the water go given X number of meters rise in water level. So take the opacity down there so you can sort of see it a little bit more clearly. And yeah, so quite interesting tools to have. But yeah, this is all, if we just go back to QGIS there, it's in my app data local folder, so I can just have a look at that. In my C drive, C, users. App data's hidden, isn't it? So show hidden files. Oh, show hidden items. There we go. Local. Oof. So this is what it's created, and this can just be packaged up into a zip folder. But you've got a JavaScript file, CSS file, HTML file, another for the data, and then some folders. So that's the actual data folder in there for the GUI, and some 3GIS libraries that it uses there. And that's it. That package that little set of files and what have you together, yeah, it's not a lot of data in there at all. Yeah. Thank you, Liam, for reporting that now the terrain RGB is working for him, and without having to do anything. So good. Sounds like it's more of a QGIS flake, because you did restart, didn't you, since installing the plugin? So I'm wondering if that is what has caused it. If you restarted to close the yeah. So perhaps a restart after installing the MapTiler plugin was what was needed. So apologies for not recommending that sooner. Right. Okay, let's just close that. Regarding the animation, what you can do with that is if you click on add, oops, now how do we do this? I was doing it just the other day. So keyframe 1, and then if I zoom out and then add another, we can just play that, and that will just do that. So if you then sort of zoom in, change the angle, zoom in a bit more, it will sort of fly to your location. So if I add that now, we can start from there, and then it will do a nice curving zoom in flight onto the pier. So yeah, these are quite cool things that you can use. I've been doing this with video capture and sort of doing zooms and pans through things, capturing it all as video, and then saving that and embedding it into materials. So yeah, very useful tool to have. Right. So that's the end of the workbook. Seppi, how long have we got left for this morning?
You've got another, I don't know, 40 minutes, 35 minutes.
Wow, we went through that quite quickly. Cool.
I'm sure there might be questions or people
absolutely
dive into something or other. Yeah.
Please, I will be here for the next 40 minutes, but we can talk over these things. I mean, those of you that had trouble connecting to the terrain RGB, now you've restarted, it's probably worth having a look at that. And absolutely, please, as many questions, anything that you want to talk about, I mean, feel free to sort of put your cameras on and give me a wave if you've got a question, or if you're happy just putting them in the chat, then please do that. Feel free messing around with your own data and asking me questions as well. Kirsty, yes, I will pop the link to the workbook in the chat again. That was on the slide. Oh, no, not that one. This one and here. So copy link and pop that in here. Very good. So please fire away. It was a bit whistle stop. Sorry about that. But I think we've got through it all. I'm going to go back to QGIS and I will save this project. Oh, thanks, Kylie, for that question. Yeah, let me I will close that, save this project quickly on the desktop. Oh, spelling is atrocious. Save that and open up a new file. So yeah, good question there on the portal not having that data now. That's a good question. I will dig into that. I've got your details, so I can let you know. When was it? It was quite a while ago. It's not new data, so I'm wondering if they've moved the high resolution stuff somewhere else. I'll find out for you. So the question from Kylie was about the other MapTiler data set. So what we've got in here is a lot of the different products that we provide. Normally, we need to be in the right projection, sorry. So 3857, apply, okay. Not changed. Okay, so but the really good thing about them is that they're brought in as vectors. So normally, yes, you can pull in quite a lot of different data. My favorite plugin was the Quick Map Services, and these are all loads and loads of different sort of raster layers. If you do a search in QMS, there's absolutely hundreds really useful layers. But the beauty of the ones from MapTiler is that actually they're in as vectors. So you've got all of these things that you can actually then, if I zoom in and you want to change the color of the land cover, you can actually do that very easily. So you can actually change the cartography. So that's the really great thing about it. You've got the labels in there, so you can adjust the labeling, change the fonts, and that sort of thing. So we've got lots of different layers in here. Some of my favorites, I'll just switch them on, and then we can have a look at them. But yeah, like I said, the great thing about them is that you can adjust them if you want to. So you'll notice with the winter and the outdoor layers, we've got hill shading in there, which uses similar sorts of techniques as we've been doing today. I think we might need to go in a bit more to see some of that. There, it's a bit more subtle because there's a lot more going on. The winter one is a really really good one. If we just hop over to the Alps, we can see some of the ski slopes that are all marked on there. So as you go down through the layers, and you can see there's more and more detail appears. These are cross-country skiing tracks. So we find a ski runs. You can, if you zoom in on the right resort, you can actually see these ski areas and these things. It's been a while since I've been skiing, so I'm just trying to find a decent one. So the idea with providing this as a service is actually that you can then create your map, tweak your colors as you want them, and be able to print that as a high res. MapTiler is essentially a service to help people get their data onto the web, or to pull maps from our servers and display them as web mapping. But quite often someone will then want to say, well, actually, I want to print this out A0, high resolution, high quality. And to be able to do that, you need something like QGIS to pull that data in. So we added the plugin there so that you could actually bring in a map like this, and then use the sort of the map layout and sort of printing settings to be able to print these maps high quality, or export them as PDFs, these sorts of things at high resolution. So that's the whole purpose and point of providing this as a service. So yes, Oliver, I did download this pre-August, the Eastbourne data. So it was probably quite maybe sometime last year, and I've just been kind of using the same file since. Cool. So yes, have a look at some of these other cartographies that we've provided. There's lots in there. Some ones sort of our version of the Stamen toner map, which is quite a famous one, and some of these other ones. We've been working on the cadastral mapping as well. It's just for Switzerland at the moment, but that's when you zoom in, you can see all the properties highlighted and their code numbers. So that's something else we're hoping to add more and more countries to that, for those of you who are interested in cadastral mapping. So that's all good. But now you've all got your MapTiler accounts, you can start setting up some of your web maps. There's an online way of editing these things as well. And yeah. Thanks for the comments, David. Yeah. Oh, have a look at Mexico. Oh, Mexico for the cadastral mapping. Yes, we're keeping it quite lightweight, so it should work with pretty much everyone's data. Just that you would then link through to find more information out if that's you know, available through whoever your mapping agency portal is. But yeah, going back to QGIS, hopefully I know there's more and more planned in terms of the 3D. Lutra Consulting are doing some great work there, and there's more crowdfunding being set up to add this functionalities and improve what QGIS offers. But in terms of the styling, I think it's just really, really incredible how much you can now do with sort of free software, free data. Oops, messing around with it's the wrong thing on. And yeah, it is. Let's go and have a look at Mexico in terrain form, and some of the features now being able to just quickly, duplicate layers, copy and paste styling from one layer to another means that it's becoming a really, really powerful tool for doing proper cartography. Any more questions on some of these other options? It's all good. One thing you can explore with is blend modes. Actually, I've turned the brightness up, and we're having a look there, similar to what we did before. We've got the same things. Just flick on a few more of these settings, and we can see a reasonable hillshade here in Mexico when it finishes drawing. But I don't know, just by a quick thumbs up, how many people use blend modes a lot in their cartography these days? Not too many. I think this is definitely something that you need to get to grips with if you haven't so far. They really do make things so much better than your regular transparencies. And there's quite a lot. I mean, I use them a lot, particularly in things like geodata visualization. So you can use them. I've given talks in the past about adding them to halos so that your labels the halos aren't too harsh on your labels, and they can sort of blend into the background and only appear when you need them to appear, to sort of lighten something so that dark text stands out, or darken something so that light text stands out. This is looking very nice, but when we first brought that in, it was zero extra brightness here and contrast, and it's quite dark. So that's multiplied, as I kind of explained, is like shining a light through two slides together. The converse of that is the screen, which is actually like having two different projectors, each with their own individual lights with a slide in shining onto one screen. So that really brightens things up. So you would use screen on something like that was dark and you wanted to brighten up, so you've got like say colored points on a dark background. You would use a screen blending mode, and when they start to overlap a lot, they really glow. So obviously no good for the shadows, but hill shading is about shadow and light, and so there is these overlay techniques actually do both. So it lightens the light bits and it darkens the dark bits. So it's like combining the effects. So if we use a soft light maybe, and that's a little bit more, or a hard light, and there you can see, so obviously a bit too much. So maybe if we took our brightness down, then we're starting to see similar effects that we had before. So always have a play with these blending modes. Some of them are a bit crazy. They sort of do these differences and subtracts, but basically you've got your lighten group up here that sort of do some of lightning effects, and then the darkening effects, these ones that kind of do a bit of both. And then I think that things like difference does crazy things with colors, and subtracts sort of a similar sort of thing. So well worth spending time on these blending modes. As some of you have seen a few of my presentations in the past will know, I'm a big fan. So yeah, any questions about those from anyone? Cool. Yes, that's the analogies I learnt from. I think it's probably the help documentation for Adobe, which have been using blend modes for quite some time. Some interesting landforms here in Mexico, so always good to explore around with these. I think we've found some really interesting volcanoes and things like that down in the Andes as well. So again, a really great way of using hill shading to sort of pick out these topographic forms and learning more about the terrain. Any further questions? Oops, sorry. So one last thing I could talk about, if I've got a point data set, and we could actually do something interesting with that. If I just see if I've got some data to hand, always good to have some natural earth data ready for occasions like this. Oh, that's lines and some points. Oops, a lot of them. Okay, that's good. So I'm just going to chuck some random points on here and have a little play around with them. Let's just switch off some of these. So a good question there from Tyler. Let's just have a quick go back to our model here. Now there's no way of incorporating a 3D scale just using this tool. What I did switch on though was the data panel, and you can click anywhere on the model and it will give you its altitude. So this is here is 31.6 meters above sea level. Down on the road here, it leaves these little yellow blobs wherever you've clicked, and so that's 10 meters above sea level. So yeah, we've got our thing at 8, so that's 8.1, and then if we take our sea level up to 9, it goes over the top of the yellow blob. So this is a really good way of being able to interact with the model and finding out altitudes, but it's not really a visual thing at the side of the map down here. I mean, it's probably possible to build a widget and add this in, but not by clicking on some options. I'm not sure what the native 3D viewer does in terms of this, so that would be an interesting avenue to explore. I seem to have lost my base map here, so. And I was going to show you some really cool things that you can do with point data in terms of, we saw the blend modes, and if you sort of have them together like that, you can actually, if we just give this a red color and take off the outline, we can actually use the blend modes to do some of these really cool effects. So if we then go down to our layer rendering, close this and get it out of the way, and the blending can be done in the layer, but it actually can also be done with the points themselves. So the more points you have gathering together, the darker it gets, essentially, if you've got a darken or if you've got a multiplied one. So if I just go to our browser here, and we'll have dark matter. Oops. Ooh. Let me just see if that came through. No, it didn't. think I'm running into some issues here, but if I can just take off the stroke. There we go, no pen on the lines. And if we use these as a screen so that they get brighter, you won't see anything on a white background. And then I will just jump over here to Quick Map Services and just put in the raster. Nope, come on, back in QGIS. So there you've got a dark matter backdrop with these points over the top. And then we just reduce the size down a little bit. Zoom out. And you can start to see that they where they overlap, they start to brighten up. So actually, if we make the points bigger, you can see there's more overlap and you get this sort of brightening effect. So this is essentially creating a heat map by having the points overlap. They're probably a bit too scattered because we're not seeing too much overlap, and when we zoom out, it all gets a bit cluttered. But if you've got genuine groupings of these things, you can use these are things to sort of build up. And it really helps if you also switch on some draw effects, which is this button down here in the layer rendering, and add an outer glow to these points, which we can change to be the same red. And we can increase the spread on that maybe to 5, and it starts putting this glow around your point. Increase the blur radius a little bit so it sort of softens the effect after a while. And you can start to see if these were smaller points and had these natural groupings, you would get these almost intense bright white patches where other areas would be left in the dark, and it creates a really good effect. And you can also use these in 3D if I think they don't know if these have any attributes. Yes, we can do that. So if we move this into back into the 3D exporter, this is a case where, well, we want our flat plane. There we go, and we've got our random points, and these are now rendered as little bubbles on the screen there. But we can actually change their radius on their type. So we've got a little menu that's popped up here, so we can make those cylinders, and we can make the height based on the one of the fields in there. So the type, I think there's just 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we've got type, but we can have type multiplied by a value. We'll put in 100 and just see what happens. Okay, apply that. So obviously the multiplier needs to be much bigger. Apply that. And bigger again. Just depends on the units. So we now have got a load of little cylinders. We can reduce the radius a little bit, maybe. But you can start to see how, if these were cities, we could vary this by population. Let's take one of those out. We've got lots of little skinny lines, and maybe take a couple of those out and zoom in to the random points. And if we turn the layer off in the background, then suddenly you can start to see that. And another one of those back. We've got these random different points, and again, great for data visualization. We've got that sky setting on, so we could change that to our solid color of black. And suddenly you're sort of building a nice data visualizations 3D scene rather than a sort of a landscape scene. There you go, a little bit extra for you, but I think unless there are any more questions, that's me done.